and today I'm here to do my June wrap-up, and this video is being sponsored in part by HarperCollins. Now for the month of June, I have to say, I am incredibly proud of myself. I completed a total of 5 books and got a really good chunk of the way through The Way of Kings, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But I mean, and a lot of the books were pretty long. I read a lot this month, amongst everything. But anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right in. The first book I'm going to talk about is the Tethered Mage by Melissa Caruso. This was the first book I completed this month. It was a book I spontaneously picked up at the San Francisco airport, and all in all, I thought it was okay. This is a story that follows and is set in the Riverian Empire, and in this empire, magic is strictly controlled by the government, so much so that any child born with magical powers is immediately conscripted into the Riverian army, where their magic is basically controlled by another individual that they're tied to. Essentially, the person who has magic has like a partner who has a word that releases or like seals back up their magic. At the beginning of the story, we follow our main character, who is the daughter of a very powerful political figure within this empire. She really just wants to pass her time inventing and reading. However, when a fire mage loses control, she accidentally kind of ties this mage to her, and there kind of starts this story. This book was incredibly fast-paced, and there was this central mystery that was kind of at the root of the novel. Unfortunately, and why this book fell a little bit flat for me, was that I kind of guessed the outcome. Always kind of makes it a little disappointing, because you're kind of holding out hope that, oh, I'm wrong, they're really gonna take me by surprise. But ultimately, no. That being said, I did think this book was really creative. I really enjoyed the Empire setting. Overall, this book was very political and kind of had this like Venetian political setup, which I thought was cool. I really love following our main character as once she became more comfortable with herself, but also became more comfortable in her political abilities. Her mother is incredibly powerful in the story, and I loved seeing her, one, like, learn from her mom, but also begin to kind of spar with her mom. Ultimately, this book was entertaining and fast-paced, but left me a little disappointed at the end, so I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was My Plain Jane by Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, and this was just a hilarious book that I just loved so much. This is a humorous and fantastical and quirky retelling of the story Jane Eyre, and it very much declares in the synopsis that this is no ordinary retelling. It very much deviates from the original text, but in all of the fun and best ways possible. Like My Lady Jane, this story is full of hijinks and fun, and oftentimes has the narrator talk directly to the reader, which is something I always think it's fun when done well, and this story definitely does that well. Jane Eyre is one of my favorite stories of all time, so to see and to read a really fun interpretation of that story was just a ride that I just did not want to get off. The authors made some really interesting changes, particularly Charlotte became one of the central main characters of the story. Yes, Charlotte Bronte, the writer of Jane Eyre, and you kind of got to see her write the story as it was truly happening. She kind of makes side remarks of how she'll change it when it reaches publication, which I thought was a really great touch. Additionally, there's a lot of really great Easter eggs to the original story and just pop culture in general, and there's a really fun supernatural twist with ghosts. Essentially, this book has like a lot of really great and entertaining things done so well, and has so much humor, and I just loved every second of it. It was just a joy to read. I had a smile on my face the entire time, and ultimately I gave this book a 4.25 out of 5 stars. It was so entertaining. Loved it. Next book I picked up was heart-wrenching, and that was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir. This is the 3rd book to the Ember Quartet, and my gosh, I love this book so much. This series has fast become one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, and I know I have not stopped talking about it on my channel at all. I'm not sorry about it though, it's so good. This is a multi-perspective, Roman-inspired fantasy story following a whole cast of dynamic characters. The 3rd book obviously took place right after the 2nd book and continuously ups the ante. I love this story because you're following so many characters that you love and hate, and sometimes both of those things. You're also constantly questioning character motivations in a way that you're like, I feel like I'm missing something. I know Sabaa is holding out on me, like I need to know what happens next, and you just have that sense of urgency throughout this entire story. I loved this 3rd installment so much. I do not know how I'm gonna wait a whole year for the 4th book in this series. It was incredible. I'm still like grappling with all the feels. It was amazing, and I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. This is a thriller mystery novel that was very, very entertaining, and this is a story that follows 5 best friends that used to be 6. However, Prior to the story starting, one of the 6 died, and after the death of Jim, they all kind of scattered and went their own ways. However, one night they all kind of meet again at this house to perhaps rehash and kind of figure out what happened the night Jim died. The unexpected happens when a man knocks on their door to tell them that they are in what is called a Neverworld wake. A slip in time, which essentially means that they're all dead and only one can survive, but they all have to come to a consensus on who that is. This book is the epitome of a fast-paced YA thriller. Marisha Pessl wrote Night Film, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is definitely a harrowing YA response to that. This book will really screw with your mind and keep you guessing to the last page. This is a book I did not guess the ending for at all. This is a novel that kind of feels like you're going like 70 miles per hour the entire time. There's no ebb and flows. It's like peak, 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 peak until the end. It's also a story where you're not really gonna love all the characters, but you're dying to figure out why and who and how they're doing the things they're deciding to do. Ultimately, I was very entertained by this story. I read it in just like 2 sittings. I could not put it down, and because of that, I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was the Perustopia Book Club Pick of the Month for the month of June, and this month Sasha and I decided to read Save the Date by Morgan Matson, and I loved this book. This feels like the first true rom-com contemporary I've picked up this year, and it was such a joy to read. This follows our main character Charlie, who lives in a very big family called the Grant family. She's incredibly close to her siblings. She is the youngest, however. This book takes place during the weekend of Charlie's oldest sister's wedding, and Charlie has been anticipating this wedding for months. Not only is it because all of her siblings are going to come back in town, whom she hasn't seen in a while, especially all together, but overall it's just going to be the best final weekend that their family is going to have in their house before it's sold. However, when literally everything that could possibly go wrong with the wedding does indeed go wrong, Charlie begins to realize and is confronted with the fact that she has been hiding behind this wedding, and even in some ways her family, from facing her own fears of one, graduating high school and choosing a college she wants to go to, and the emotional impact of her family selling this house. This book was hilarious. It takes place over a span of 3 days, which I thought was incredibly effective and very entertaining. The dialogue is just fantastic. The relationships between all the characters are dynamic, but also like you could feel the history. I was entertained reading this story the entire time, so much that I literally read it in 2 sittings. One sitting I read the last 300 pages basically in one go. I was just completely captured by this tale and this family, and this isn't all just like rom-com, easygoing, light feelings. Morgan Matson really weaves in some really impactful family moments as well, and that just really enrich the story even further. Really cannot speak to you more how funny and entertaining, but also like dynamic this contemporary story was, and I just really loved it, and it makes me want to read more contemporary and more Morgan Matson. So I ended up giving this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So cute. And the last book I'm going to talk about is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. At this point of filming this video, I have read 337 pages of this book, and I am obsessed with it. It took me about 40 to 50 pages to get into the story, but once I did, guys, I cannot stop thinking about this book. I cannot stop reading this book. It completely takes over my life. And I will say, I read this book at a much slower pace than any YA book that I read this month. I mean, the pages have a lot of words and they're very big, so like it's a commitment to sit down and read this book. Overall, it's very hard to articulate exactly what the plot of this book is about, namely because I'm 337 pages in, and I've definitely been introduced to a few main characters' perspectives, but all of these characters' perspectives are very much isolated, meaning like I know each character's subplot as it is so far, but how those subplots ladder up to the main overall plot, how they'll ultimately interact and impact each other, I have no idea yet. That being said, I am loving this book so much. It's completely just keeping me from doing anything else, to be completely honest. Kaladin is like my bae right now, and you just get a lot of really interesting perspectives. So far, there are 3 perspectives. We have Kaladin, who was a soldier turned slave. We have Shalom, who is a young female aristocrat who is trying to win and become the apprentice to a very famous female scholar. And then we have Dalinar, who is the like king's guard and protector and the uncle to the current king. And all these people are trying to accomplish all sorts of things. But again, what the large overarching plot is, I don't know, and I'm sure Brandon Sanderson will blow my mind, but this is the first book to a 13-book series, and I've got a lot to find out so far. But so far, I love it, and I can't wait to keep reading it in July, pick up Words of Radiance, pick up Oathbringer, and just like die, because I don't know what I'm gonna do when I finish this book series, because it's completely taken over my life. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I have read in June. Let me know down below some books you have read recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!